Hello, I'm Matt Peterson,
And I'm Rich Trappier.
and this is episode 42 of History on the Table.
I assume you've read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right?
Of course.
Okay, so this is the one where we reveal the answer to the top 20 games of all time, I guess.
Nice. That's a bit of a stretch, but we'll go with it because I didn't have much of a segue other than my dog making a bunch of noise right when we were starting to record. So
That's awesome. New co-host.
new co-host, Rye Charles Peterson. He's a big, hungry boy. Yeah, Rich, this is a big one. I'm really excited for it. We're doing the listener top 20 games of all time for 2022.
Yeah. And it was funny because I think you and I kind of both did the same thing. We didn't initially put in our votes, and then I decided, well, I'm just going to go and put in mine, and then you decided, oh, I'm going to put in mine too. So we are just one vote among many.
Yes. Yeah, we have statistics for all of that. We're gonna little change of plans for the evening. No Wargame game tonight. So
people are already tuning it out.
that's right.
That's what they wanted to hear.
You will still be able to hear Rich struggle over clues. As Rich, you have not seen the final top 20 results.
I have not.
So you have that to look forward to. But of course, we have all other stuff to get to. We have our featured game. It's been Fleet Month all month.
Yes, and it's been fun. And you've been streaming and everything.
Yeah, and
Nice.
we're gonna keep it going. It's been a lot of fun. I didn't have I don't think we have any news this month, which is fine.
No, I guess, we could talk about it now or later, but it kind of goes with games on the shelf, but games you've ordered. I successfully avoided buying anything for any of the sales.
Whoa.
I know, which, honestly, mostly it's just because I've already got everything,
Sure.
I looked at the GMT sale and like, oh, you can get all these games half off. I'm like, well, I already bought everything I want to get. So there was nothing that I really felt that I missed out on that I wanted to pick up. So.
Okay, well, we're here. Before we talk about what's getting in the mail, what we got in the mail, let's talk about, the holiday sales. So just about everyone was running some kind of sale.
Mm-hmm.
I did also avoid most of them, except GMT got their claws into me.
So what'd you get?
Yeah, so I don't own Fire in the Lake.
Okay.
And the third printing just came out, 2 months ago. It was eligible for the sale.
Okay. Yeah, I already had that one, so.
Of course. Urban Sprawl was $10, which is a Euro game. And
Okay, I've heard of it. I've never played it.
sure. And then the one I'm really excited about is 1805 Sea of Glory.
That does not sound like an 18XX game.
It is not. It's a Napoleonic game set focused on the English Channel.
Okay. But it's not ship to ship like Captain Sea, I assume.
No, it's like operational
Okay.
naval. It's got chip pull. I don't know to what extent. It is block wargaming, but they made 10 bagged copies available for the sale. And so I started looking at this, and it looks pretty interesting. I don't really think I have anything like it.
Yeah, that game is not on my radar at all, so interesting.
I don't think I had heard of it until the sale. So it's designed by Phil Fry, who did a game called Fire as She Bears as well, which looks to be more of a miniatures game. So, and then this.
Cool.
Yeah. Did you have anything show up in the mail if you avoided the sales?
No, I did not add anything at all to my shelves this month. I even went to Miniature Market. I was actually there tonight because I was killing time. I was dropping my daughter off for choir, and a couple things. There was Musket Pike was sitting there, and I thought, yeah, that looks kind of cool. But I also thought, how different is it from the Men of Iron series? And I honestly don't know, but it kind of looks the same. I'm like, let me play all these first.
Sure.
Other than that, the only other game that's just been kind of pulling at me is the what's the revolutionary one? I think it's called War for America. That one looks interesting, and that's currently on the shelf there.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, I did get a couple things.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited for both of these because they're both. I've seen more about Swords Around the Throne than the other one here, so they're not like Men of Iron or Pacific War or things you hear about all the time. And so Swords Around the Throne is a strategic Napoleonics game.
Okay.
From My Kind of Games.
Okay, I've heard of that game, but don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, designed by Renaud Verlac, sorry. So Grand Strategic France, and I think the deal here is it's supposed to be like pretty light, but it allows you to like cover the whole Napoleonic era or take it in bite-sized pieces. So it can play in like 30 minutes, or you can do like the whole shebang and have like a several hour. It does use cards, but it's not a card driven game to my knowledge. Just by like pulling out the cards and looking at them. I haven't read the rules yet. The cards have symbols on them, but I don't see any event cards. So that looks pretty awesome. I'm excited to give that one a go.
Cool.
And the other one was, the Charlie Awards were announced, the finalists, right? And I was going through the ballots, and a couple, not a lot jumped out at me. Last year it was that World War I game that, you know what I'm talking about, right? The World War I game that got a lot of...
was it like Death in the Trenches or something like that? Or
why can't I think of it? It's right behind me, but I think it's covered up right now. Whatever. The World War I game that got a lot of buzz in last year's Charlie. So nothing jumped out at me like that this year, but there was a game that someone on Twitter drew my attention to in the same category that Red Flag Over Paris was in, which immediately got my vote because I love Red Flag Over Paris. Anyways, War of the Triple Alliance. So do you know about the War of the Triple Alliance?
So when I think of the Triple Alliance, I think of Austerlitz. But I don't think that's what you're talking about. Right.
And that's kind of where, I don't know if I would nail Austerlitz like as you did, but that's kind of the time frame I would think. And no. So this is 1864 South America, and it's Paraguay fighting against...
We were busy at the time. We didn't know about that war.
That's right. Fighting against Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay.
Okay. Now, if you just said those names, I'd think you were talking about the World Cup.
Nice. Rich watches soccer today.
I watched one game. Yeah, so I'm an expert now. Sorry, I'm gonna get us back on track here. War of the Triple Alliance. No, I want to hear about this because I would have never known that this war even existed.
Yeah, I don't think it's super detailed. I think it's a good, light game, but it does, I think, do some interesting things with card play. It is a card driven game. Point to point, and I think there's this interesting mechanic from what I gather of how time is manipulated in the game. Like the game can last longer depending on how you use your cards. To the extent you use those cards or how it plays beyond that, I'm not really sure. Someone on Twitter is just really talking it up and was like, wow, I've never heard of this game. And then I started like, well, that's a really interesting topic. Oh, that's a really great looking map. So yeah. And this is, I don't remember if I said it, this is from NAC Wargames.
Okay.
Designed by Pedro Martinez.
And you've already got these games in your grubby little hands?
I do, yes. Okay. Both of them are 2-player.
Nice.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, and Verdun Steel Inferno is the game
that's
you're
what it is.
About. Yeah.
Exactly what I'm thank you. So yeah, nothing from like the big dogs, but
yeah.
I'm kind of on this kick as once we get into the games, you'll see, diving a little bit into these other publishers, which has been fun. It's been an experience.
Yeah, I'll have to wait till the some more P500s start dropping before I order some more. I've got a few things on the P500 list, and I'm not swearing off buying war games by any means. I've just been slowing down and trying to play the stuff I have more.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about some books, which we've both been doing. I started one that you and several people on the History on the Table Discord have recommended.
Yeah.
Pacific Crucible, War at Sea in the Pacific, 1941 to 1942 by Ian Toll. This is...
is that the first one in the 3?
This is book 1.
Okay.
So this is the Pacific War trilogy running from 1941 through 1945. I assume the third book. And so far it's fantastic. And of course I've started this already to get as far as I can through it all in time for Pacific War, which is next month.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Great book. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So
yeah, I'm still, I mean, it's long. I've, barely made it in. I've kind of been like bouncing around things. And really, I'm reading.
I think they each one get longer too. So like the first one, you're like, this is a long book. And like by the time you get to the third one, I think it's twice the size of the first one. So
I mentioned this earlier. I am a little disappointed that Grover Gardner does not narrate all of them, because he's one of the best historical narrators out there for audiobooks.
I don't really like, I'll hear a book and I'll go, oh yeah, I've heard this guy's voice before, but I never really put names to him. So there's like no name like Grover Gardner. It doesn't really mean anything to me, but if I heard his voice, I'd probably be like, oh yeah, I've heard this guy. He's good.
Well, if you ever do all of Shelby Foote, it's narrated by Grover Gardner, and that's 60 plus hours of narration, and you're really going to know Grover Gardner's voice. Yeah, this is my so when I commute, I'm really digging that Between Two Fires book I talked about for spooky season. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. It's so good. But the language and the detail of violence is pretty up there. So I'll turn on Pacific Crucible when I'm showering, so like my daughter doesn't hear like some of the most vile stuff. Yeah. Yeah, nice. You know it's going to be authentic when they have to apologize at the beginning. They're like, I'm just using the words they said. Yeah, so Pacific Crucible is good, clean listening. Between Two Fires, not so clean. Yeah. All right, you've been reading, sir. Yeah, I listened to a book called The Earth is Weeping by Peter Cozzens. This was a pretty good book. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's about the American and the Plains Indians Wars, from basically late 1840s up to about 1890 or so, and very extensive. I mean, it covered like all the big stuff that you've heard of for sure, like Custer and Little Bighorn, and Sitting Bull, and I mean everything you've heard of is in there, plus a lot of stuff you haven't heard of as well. So it was really fascinating. I mean, he does a good job of talking about the betrayals, Indian on Indian betrayal, U.S. lying to the Indians all the time, and the desperation that they had. They're like, yeah, we know they're lying to us, we know they're not going to keep their word, but they're so much more powerful than us. This is the best we can do is just hope that they will keep their word. And then there's a lot of Indians are they're still raiding and killing people all the time, which brings reprisals and this whole circle of violence. But it was a really good book. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It really, as I was reading it, I was thinking about how you did not like the game, the Plains Indians Wars, and thinking, well, that's a shame, because there really should be a good game about this. I have played Comancheria. I have not played Navajo Wars. Comancheria it's interesting. It's fun. It's a solitaire only game, which, I usually play those a couple times and lose interest in them, but it really did make me want a good war game on this subject, which I don't know if there is one. Yeah, I think first off, I agree with you. I think that Comancheria is a good, interesting, it's one of the better solo only games. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that a lot, not our favorite cup of tea for sure, but I agree there should be some two-player, and I'm sure they're out there, I just haven't discovered them yet, but Plains Indian Wars was certainly not it. Yeah, that's funny. So that book has been on my to-read for a long time, and then Peter Cozzens also has tons of Civil War stuff. I think his Chickamauga book is supposed to be one of the definitive. I could be wrong on that, don't hold me to that, but I think it's one of the go-tos for if you're going to read something about Chickamauga. Interesting. I'll probably come back to him again at some point once I start playing some Civil War games again. Nice. And then I haven't finished this one yet, but I'm about halfway through it. Crusaders by Dan Jones. You and I both talked about Dan Jones quite a bit. He's written a lot of books on that time period. He's written Plantagenets and War of the Roses and Templars. I haven't read all of them. I eventually will, but I like his writing, and this one is obviously about the Crusades. So it's good so far. Dan the medieval man.
Yeah, he writes good stuff. I mean, anytime I see one of his books, I know I'm going to like it. So,
yeah, you know what? This is making me think like I should get a Dan Jones book and crack it open because, yeah, damn, his stuff is great, and I recommended it to my receptionist. Is super into history, and she started with Plantagenets, which obviously makes sense.
Yep,
and she loved it. So. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. That's a good solid lineup of reading this month, sir.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of reading. I guess I've been doing more reading than playing lately, but that's all right.
I will just very quickly mention I wrapped up The Outpost, which I don't think I had mentioned on the show. I know I talked about it, how good it was, and I just want to confirm as I finished, it still holds up 5 out of 5.
Nice.
Cop Keating is just such an interesting mess to me, and both Red Platoon, which is a very focused on the final Battle of Chem Dash, and The Outpost, which really covers from beginning of Cop Keating until U.S. forces finally withdrew from it. Both are phenomenal. So yeah, just 5 out of 5.
If you hadn't read either of them, which one should I read first?
I guess it depends on how much time you have. The Outpost is much longer.
Okay.
Red Platoon is a very easy read. But it's so well written, and the level of detail actually in both of them is unnerving and sad and maddening all throughout. I did Red Platoon first just because I watched that Netflix Medal of Honor show. Yeah. That's where I had heard about it. And so you could go that route for sure, but I don't know. Do you want the big picture or do you want the zoomed in on the battle?
Okay, cool.
No wrong choice.
Check those out.
All right, let's talk about some games. I will real quickly start us off with I played Next War Poland, doing a very a hybrid scenario. But I will mention...
Was that the new one that Butch put out for playtesting?
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen that, but I haven't played it.
I'm going to re-rack it. I started it solo. And really, with the focus of that scenario, which is a small corridor, you're in the action right away. It's really bloody from the get-go. I don't know if it can count as I don't think I've gotten the full Next War Poland experience, obviously, because I'm not even using the strategic map or anything like that. So I'll mention Next War Poland that I finally got it to the table. I had not played Poland before, and it, of course, looks great. I played on Vassal to get the scenario set up, but Next War Poland finally on the table, although I haven't really played Next War Poland, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested in that, you should join the Next War Discord server, because I think that's where Mitch has been posting all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I've got more than you, so I'll just go again so we can.
Sure.
The other one I'll real quickly mention, and this is I mentioned checking out these smaller publishers. Have you followed anything from VUCA Simulations? VUCA?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, so they have just gorgeous games coming out, and a few of them just dropped this year. Donnerschlag, which is what I'm going to talk about. The Chase of the Bismarck just came out, which is kind of like a hide and seek with a screen between the players, like a blind game almost, is my understanding. Yeah. And then the World War I game, 1914 Noche Paris, also came out. So I played Donnerschlag. They all look great, and it's a pretty fun card-driven game. Actually, it's a very fun card-driven game. It has some issues, major translation issues. You can get over them. But, Rich, if I'm the Russians and I play a card and all the card says is Panzer, what do you think that card means?
So you're playing the Russians and you play a card that says Panzer.
That's all it says.
Are the cards, is there a separate deck for Russians and Germans? Mm-hmm. They share a deck. So it's a Russian card that says Panzer.
Yep.
I'm going to say a Panzer unit broke down due to mechanical difficulties.
You're supposed to get a tank. The Russian player's supposed to get a tank. And it's like, the errata may exist on the website, but I had to go find it on BGG. And like, that's a pretty big translation issue.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just like you're calling all tanks panzers. It's like, you're not even explaining what the card does. Yeah. So if you can work through those things, the really interesting thing about this game is the German player is trying to break out, right? So they're trying to get out of Stalingrad, and they're trying to link up, and they have to yell, Donnerschlag, Donnerschlag, and they designate an area they are trying to break out to, but they only have a set number of turns to do that, and then they have to link up within, I think it's 3 turns. And so it's kind of this bluffing game. Like the German, you kind of have 3 fronts, and so you're advancing on those fronts, but you don't want to tip your hand too early to reveal where your main thrust out is going to be, because obviously then the Russian player is going to focus there. But if you wait too long, you're going to run out of time.
Does the German player have to make a decision and commit, or can they see how it goes and then decide?
You have yes and no. Once you commit, you're committed.
Okay.
But you have, I think, the first 4 turns before you commit. And there's another like rules thing is like it needs to come out and explicitly say by turn 4 the German player must cue Donnerschlag. And it doesn't. What it says is like, well, it's like implied that if they don't, then they lose the game. Like it's too late. And it's just kind of like weird things like that. But all of that said, it's light, but the card play's fun. Your kind of like tactics cards, for lack of a better term, aren't guaranteed to go off. And so there's a little bit of like, all right, I'm going to do this thing to really enhance my attack here, but it's not guaranteed to happen. And you can guarantee some cards. And so like you can guarantee the one card you really want to go off, but later on you're not sure if you're going to get the next thing. So those 2 things I really like. The tactics cards, and then you declare where you're going to break out, and you have to do it within this window, and it's kind of like this bluff, and then it's a race to get out. It's fun. It has its issues, and it looks gorgeous. And so if you're not opposed to, having BGG pulled up and doing some searches while you tackle this game, I recommend it. I played on Vassal, and I played solo, and this is not a solo friendly game at all.
Yeah. If it's got bluffing in it.
Yeah, right. But still just going through the mechanics and that idea of it. So this is something that I would like to play again, and I would like to play it opposed, even with the issues. It's really cool.
Nice.
I said it was going to be a short one, but it's unique enough that it's worth talking about. Plus, it's a new publisher. Yeah. And again, it's, something we don't always talk about.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of buzz just talking about that company lately. So it looks like they've got some interesting games.
Well, I mean, that 1914 Nosh Paris just looks fantastic. And I've heard, our buddy Toby has been playing it. And I think he mentioned some translation issues as well. But otherwise, he's been very impressed with it.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. All right.
I guess I'll take one.
Yeah.
I played some more Reds. Patrick and I we continued our game. We've been playing off and on for a few months now. It's just like whenever we can find a night to play for a few hours. And we played actually a little bit longer this time. We probably played 3, maybe a little longer, 3 hours, maybe longer. But I think we've got like one long night ahead of us, and we'll actually be able to finish the whole game. So we're proceeding on. It's a fun game. I'm enjoying it. It's very back and forth. There's neither of us is in any way assured of victory or loss. So, but he's starting to turn the tide just because he gets so many reinforcements. So, but if you're playing a game against Russia, you have to assume that they are just never going to stop. So, I'm enjoying it quite a bit, and hopefully sometime in December we'll be able to finish it up, and I'll be able to provide a final report on it. So,
nice
playing that one.
Yeah, speaking of Patrick, we had a game night a couple of weeks ago, and we started off with Flashpoint South China Sea. This is the Harold Buchanan, very light, card-driven game.
Is this in the lunchtime series?
Yeah.
Okay.
My concern after playing this once was how much depth is actually present in this game. Do you just focus on this one strategy and that's really the optimal strategy? And after another play, I'm starting to see, like, I think the depth is legitimate. I think there isn't just one dominant strategy. I think you have to consider all these different options with how to play your cards, how to manipulate your cubes. Had a really, really fun time with it. And this was in the GMT sale. And at $20, that's a hell of a filler.
How similar is it to Fort Sumter?
Way different.
Okay, because I didn't like that game at all.
Way different. You know, Red Flag over Paris is better Fort Sumter. This is
right.
This is completely
okay.
I guess I shouldn't say completely different, but it's more. I didn't even think of Fort Sumter when I played it, but now that you mention it, yeah, sure, I could see similarities, but that didn't even cross my mind in my first couple plays.
All right, because I knew they were both part of that sort of lunchtime battles or whatever it's called, but I didn't know if it was actually a series or if they're all just short games. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's just all short games. So what, if we're ever bored one night, I mean, and you can teach it, at the drop of a hat, or maybe I'll throw it in the bag for our upcoming rendezvous.
Yeah, we need to schedule that. Well, we got one scheduled, I know. So I played Arracourt as well. This one I actually got to play on the table, which was nice. We played at our St. Louis Historical Gaming Society Day at Miniature Market a couple weeks ago. And we actually had two different games going. We had Mitch and Bruce played on one table, and then I played with Todd on another table. So it's if you don't know about Arracourt, it's the latest in the BCS series by MMP. And it's a one mapper. And honestly, if you're interested in BCS and you're just you want a game to feel out the system, Arracourt's just perfect. I mean, it gets you right in the middle of the action. Everything's on one map. It's got, it obviously doesn't have the grand scale of something like the Last Blitzkrieg or something, but you can play a game easily in just a few hours. And it's just fun. And one of the things I really like about it too is the scenario setup. It basically starts with the American trains getting jumped. So, which sounds bad, but if you're going to play BCS, jumping trains and jumping headquarters is a big part of what you're trying to do, part of the strategy. So that lets both players see, like literally on the first turn, this is why you have to protect your headquarters. This is why you have to protect your trains. So the Germans are almost always able to do that on the first turn. And then, how do both sides respond to it? It's such a fun game, and I'll play it pretty much anytime I get the chance.
Nice.
Yeah.
Should I just throw in the ever-present, I need to play more BCS here, or should I just wait till later? Because
yeah, I mean, add it to the list of things that you want to play more, and it'll fit right in there.
Speaking of things I wanted to play more, Blind Swords.
Yeah.
There was some talk on the Discord about it, and then I really wanted to get back to Blind Swords, and so Patrick and I played a Greater Victory, and this is South Mountain, and the Vassal module has some hoops to jump through and get it functioning right, but once you get it functioning right, it runs very smoothly, and so we had some hurdles in our stream of doing that, but once we were rolling, man, getting back to Blind Swords. And this map, so if you're unfamiliar, Blind Swords chit pull game. Chit pull game with an added layer of, even if you activate the unit you want to activate, you're not even certain what kind of activation they're going to get. Fantastic. Just so good. And the South Mountain terrain is horrendous.
Is this a Rick Barber map?
No. I
okay.
think this is one of no.
Okay.
It's not. So this is fantastic. I think someone asked, because we started a poll on it, what's the best Blind Swords game? I don't know if this is the best. I like Thunder and the Ozarks a lot. This has some different rules. There's no cav charges in this, and it's just, I do like that they've now, They have the series rules now, and then you have what I'm trying to say is this has more flavor to feel like South Mountain. Like it has its own rules and customizations, taking out cavalry charges, that type of thing. So
yeah.
another...
Just in that series in general, I mean, with all the different kinds of guns that you can have in that game, there's a lot of customization based on just what the guys were bringing to the battle.
Sure.
You know, these guys have shotguns. They can't shoot 2 hexes away, but if you let them get next to you, they're going to tear you up. You know, it's good stuff.
It's great stuff. What I particularly like about this one is it's wide open. And specifically the scenario we're playing is the terrain sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And the Union has this rule where one corps is below the turnpike and the other corps is above it. But other than that, there's quite a few different ways they can go.
Yeah.
There are trails and stuff, so it's going to be a bit of a crawl. But there's lots of different areas to attack as the Union, which means there's a lot of holes to fill as the Confederates. And I like that wide openness of that scenario especially. Like I really like the options it's presenting me.
Yeah, and that's why I like Thunder at Dawn so much. Thunder in the Ozarks is fun. I enjoy it, but you're pretty limited to how you come in, and the game's sort of going to develop the same way. Thunder at Dawn is a lot more wide open, and in fact, I think the second sort of, it's ahistorical, but it's an optional scenario. It basically gives you free setup, and you can attack any way you want, which really opens it up. Yeah.
I think we talked about it with our DIN 44 is just the idea of open setup.
Yeah.
That's cool. I have that. Duh. Well, I need to play that. Awesome. Okay, the last one I was saving, maybe the best for last, but one of the most anticipated for last, and that is John Company 2nd Edition. Mm-hmm. Not a war game, although it does have military actions. This is just a historical themed negotiation Euro game, and heavy emphasis on the negotiation. And so what John Company is you represent a family that is trying to benefit your family's gains by manipulating the East India Trade Company. And you do that by putting your family members in different positions. So they can be lowly clerks, they can be officers, they can be commanders, they can be governors, they can be in charge of trade, they can be in charge of all military actions, they can be in charge of the company. And each of those people I just listed will have a very specific set of actions they can carry out. And how you carry out those actions are either going to hurt or help the company. And you can try to tank the East India Trade Company, or you can try to make it float and buy all these shares. But if it tanks and you hold a bunch of shares, you're going to lose a bunch of points. And there's just so much potential for negotiation. Like, hey, I'll make you commander here, but I want you, then I want you to do this in exchange. Mm-hmm. And you have these cards like you can trade that are like future binding promises. Like, all right, you get my votes when Parliament votes if you do this. And so, it's been a while since we've talked about when we did our top 5 negotiation games. A lot of the games, I just hadn't played that many. I didn't spend a lot of time with Dune. I hadn't played anything like this. It does remind me of Pax Pamir, where there's a lot of, well, shit, we can't let Rich be in charge of the company because Rich is going to do this, everyone. And so there's a lot of that going on at the table. Oh, man, it is fantastic. There's lots of little rules, but it's very procedural to learn. You get the big picture. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's how you get the points. Most points wins. And then you just say, okay, we're going to start with this turn. Here's what this person does. It's so good. It looks gorgeous. The components are nice. Awesome.
Yeah, I got to play that.
It's so good.
Would it be good on Vassal Live, you think?
Yeah. I mean, yes. Okay. I wouldn't play this async.
Right,
I think
not async. Yeah, because not enough interaction.
Right. Pax Pamir just loses so much async because there's so less pointing out and don't do that. That's going to help Rich.
Yep.
So you need that here, but sure, you can play this on Vassal, I think.
Yeah.
Why
cool.
not?
Yeah, maybe we can play that together sometime. Maybe at KC next year.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, yeah, yes. This is phenomenal. It is everything I wanted it to be.
Nice.
Whoo, doggy. That's a lot of games.
Yeah, I would have ordered that one, except part of the reason I wanted it was because I wanted PAX Premier, and someone sold me their copy of PAX Premier, so I didn't end up ordering John Company, but now I kind of wish I had just gotten them both.
They do have copies available to purchase on the Whirligig store.
Okay, cool.
I
wonder if it'll show up at Miniature Market. I have seen Whirligig games there before.
Really?
So it's possible, yeah.
Okay. I don't know if this is going to retailers or not.
Yeah.
But I did see a tweet from Whirligig that they have copies on their store.
Cool.
Yeah, man, it's so good. Okay. Those are our games, and we have no other games except the game.
We have a new game.
I'm not talking about the Wargame game.
No, that's yesterday's news and tomorrow's.
Talking
but
about
not today's.
Our featured game. As chosen by Rich and I, not chosen by the patrons. This is a big one. This one I'm really excited about, and that's Second Fleet. Modern naval combat in the North Atlantic. We're going back in time, folks. 1986. I wasn't even born yet.
Oh gosh, you're such a baby. I was 13.
13 and aboard the Lajala. Designed by Joseph Belkowski, published by Victory Games, and this is a hypothetical. You know, there's no real historical setting here other than it's the Russian Northern Fleet against the American Second Fleet and, assisting NATO forces, set in the North Atlantic, primarily off the coast of Norway.
And there's a whole series of fleet games. Basically, if you've got an ocean, there's a fleet game for it. So, but this one we selected specifically because it's the year of Finnish naval wargaming.
Yes, and there are 3 Finnish hexes represented.
There's no bases or anything there, but you can fly over them if you want to.
Yes, right. I don't even do you think there's even anything we need to mention with the setting? I don't. I mean, it's North Atlantic, 80s submarines and carriers, which is really cool. All the units, most of the units have names on them, so it's the Lajala or the La Jolla.
One of those two. I was actually on that boat for a time in the 90s, early 90s, I guess.
Okay.
We pronounced it La Jolla, but it could be that we were wrong, and it is actually the Lajala.
I think La Jolla is a boat and Lajala is a ship.
Oh yeah, that's probably it. Yeah. Now I may put Army planes on aircraft carriers in the Korean War, but I can't let that stand.
Oh man.
No, I remember the La Jolla very fondly. She was a nice boat. I enjoyed my time with her. So.
Yeah, we had Mitch in one of our streams, last night's streams, and that was a resource because of course Mitch knows that the NWP NWS is the
Newport News.
It is the Newport News.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because all the counters. So there actually is a key in the book.
Yeah.
That lists what every ship actually is, but all the counters have just like a string of letters on them, and you have to kind of play Wheel of Fortune to figure out what the ship actually is.
Yeah. So before we dive into Second Fleet, I want to go back to your earlier comment. This is a series of games. So Second Fleet, North Atlantic. You have Third Fleet, which is Caribbean, Atlantic Ocean, and some of the Pacific. I haven't done anything with Third Fleet.
Sixth Fleet is the Med, because I've got that one too.
Fifth Fleet is Indian Ocean, and then Seventh Fleet, which is the other one I've played, is Far East.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a fleet series, and they share a lot of similarities, but they're not necessarily the same. As a matter of fact, Second Fleet uses a D10, Sixth Fleet uses a D6, and I think maybe Seventh Fleet uses a 2D6. Whatever it is, there is differences, which obviously 2d6 is on a curve and d10 is not. There's also game-specific rules. Second Fleet has fjords. You can go down and go through all the minor differences, but generally speaking, they share a lot of similarities. but as Jason pointed out, you may have one ship in Second Fleet that has slightly different numbers than Seventh Fleet because of the different dice mechanics. So just because you know Second Fleet, there might be some changes if you jump over to another one.
Yeah.
With that out of the way, let's talk Second Fleet.
Yeah, so I guess my initial thought, so I had known that these games were a thing. I mean, I'm an old sailor. I have heard of these games and thought it'd be cool to play them one day, and haven't played them at all until this year. But before I knew anything about these games, I guess I imagined that they were a lot more heavy than this one actually was. And that's not a knock against it. I was sort of pleasantly surprised that the game is not super complicated.
No.
I mean, there are things about it that you have to keep looking up. Like the counters are very dense. They've got, I don't know, probably some of them might have 10 different numbers and notations on a single counter. So you have to look up and see, oh, that's the close anti-air. That's the area anti-air. That's the anti-sub defense. That's the surface-to-surface missile. So there's a lot on there. But honestly, the actual gameplay itself is not complicated at hard. Combat, there's slight differences in the different types of combat, but some of them, like I think anti-submarine combat, is just straight die roll. Nothing at all, and damaging ships, if you do more than half damage, you flip them. And if you do more than their full defense, you destroy them. So I was actually sort of pleasantly surprised at how light the game is, just because, this is a game that I can play with my wife or daughter and have a lot of fun with it. Now, that said, if you want to play the advanced game, the full scenario, then it's going to get a lot more complicated, mostly just because of scale. You're going to have free setup, basically. You're going to have reinforcements coming in. There's a lot of optional rules that you can use. But if you play not even just the basic game, but even like up to the intermediary game, which doesn't add that much more to it, it's not that deep, not that complicated a game, really.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Even the advanced rules outside the optional stuff, I think it's like 4 or 5 new things. And some of those things are like darkness.
And bombing airfields and stuff like that.
Well, that's an intermediate.
The intermediate, that's right. Yeah.
And so it's got like reinforcements and invasions and these other things. But the rules are super well written for, not that rules weren't written well in the 80s, but it's a 36-year-old game at this point. And so everything's very digestible. And I agree. When I pulled out the Second Fleet rules and started pushing around solo, it had been 2 years. It was the month before COVID started that I played Seventh Fleet, and I had completely forgotten, like, oh yeah, this makes total sense. There is a little bit of confusion with how each of the different attacks operate, but they're so procedural that you just know that, okay, if I want to attack a surface ship with my surface ship, you just need to know that's going to be an SSM, and then you take those attack steps step by step. And I know we kind of like just jumped into some of the details, but I agree. This is not there is a lot of rule, but this is just another example of there is nothing overly complex here. Maybe if you want to start talking about tracking logistics.
Yeah, I did not do that, but I would love to sometime. I'd love to play the advanced game, full scenario, track logistics. I want to track every cruise missile, every fuel point. I think that would be fun, but it's not something I was doing this month.
Yeah. Before we dive into too much more detail, I want to, the characteristic of this game is every day is broken up into phases. So 3 turns make up a day, and during those days, you're going to do different things. You'll have a strategic air phase in the morning, which lets you carry out big air missions, detection, interception, attack roll modifiers, those types of things. Aerial mining if you're playing advanced rules. After strategic air phase, there's combat air patrol phase, those types of things. But really where the game, I think, really shines and just adds another nuance level of complexity is you get into activation phases. And so Rich rolls and he gets an odd, and so he's activating his Russians. Rich will then pick to either activate all of his subs, all of his surface, or all of his air. And then it passes back to me and I pick one of those.
Yeah, and you don't have to pick the same one.
I don't have to pick the same one. And then we roll again, and now maybe I get another activation because it's an even, and then I can pick one of the two that I didn't pick before. So each turn has these 3 phases where you're doing only your subs, only your surface, only your air.
Yep. And you can even, like, say, I activate my subs first. On the second activation, for whatever reason, I may want to pass and not do either one. Maybe I don't have many air to do, and I'm not ready to do my surface units yet because I want you to come into range, something like that. I'm going to get 3 different picks, and I can do them in any order I want.
Yeah, and it just adds a layer of, on its face that's pretty clear, well, you're going to pick the thing that gives you the most advantage. But then there's like layers of nuance where, okay, I want to, and this came up last night, I want to activate my surface units last because they're still in a task force. But when they come around to activate, they're going to lose their task force marker because the ship got sunk, and they're going to lose their defensive die modifier. And so even little things like that, like I'm not activating my surface until the last possible chance. So if you better do your air because you're going to come in and bomb them, because there's a very good chance that you're saving your air to come after my surface units. And my surface units may be the last thing to go. Just little things like that, just really, they come through and shine as you play. And that activation system it's just brilliant. I really like it.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was cool is, so there's 3 phases to every turn. There's 3 turns, I guess you would call it, in every day.
Right.
So let's say that. And there's 2 day turns and a night turn. But depending on the time of the year, they might all be light, or I think you might have 2 darkness turns or all darkness turns. Mm-hmm. So if you're playing in the middle of the winter, the sun's never going to come up when they're that far north. So it's kind of cool because you have different day and different light, and there are special night rules that even if it's light during the nighttime, you do certain things in the advanced game. But there are light and dark rules as well, depending on what time of the year you're playing.
Yeah, there's night turns and then there's night turns, and you have to understand the difference. That night doesn't mean night, of course, right. And I'm sure that's clear as pitch black night. Yeah, I think another, while we're talking like defining characteristics, another one, of course, I think is detection, which I think when I talked to you about 7th Fleet, we talked about, so long ago, we talked about detection, and I think you said at the time, that's an important thing for you in fleet games, is this idea of detection, meaning you're not able to act against enemy units,
right,
unless you know where they're at. Because it turns out that the ocean is pretty big.
Yeah, and you've got, like you said, there's a strategic air phase that's once per day where you can send out your reconnaissance planes and try to detect enemy units. So if they're on the surface, they're super easy to detect them. You just have to basically spend a plane to do it. If they're submarines, you have to spend a plane and then roll and hope to detect them. And if you can do that during the strategic air phase, it lasts all 3 turns that day, which is nice. Mm-hmm. But then anyone that doesn't get detected, it can happen during movement and action and things like that. So if you move up next to somebody, obviously if it's a surface unit, you just got to get close to them and you'll be able to detect them. Submarines, it actually depends on how good your anti-submarine skills are. So if you send a ship up to them that has no anti-submarine warfare capability, it will not detect that submarine. So there's nothing you can do about it. You have to use the right kind of ships and move them in the right place and time. And that's where you really get into the strategy of the game. I found, I unfortunately was not able to play this against anyone. So I just played a bunch of scenarios solitaire. But a big part of the game is knowing which units to activate in which order so that you can get the jump on the enemy, because it's a lot about maneuver. And, ideally you want them to move into your attack range so that you can jump up and attack them on your turn.
Just
because
real quick,
it's a pretty deadly game. I mean, you're going to sink a lot of ships in this game.
Yeah, when on our opposed games, our first intermediate game didn't have a ton of casualties, but we're through one day in this next one, and I'm losing things left and right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ships. If you roll well, you're going to sink a lot of ships with one hit. And I mean, all except for the biggest ships or you're going to at least damage. So, I mean, you can roll poorly and not damage a bunch of ships,
Sure.
even when you send in a bunch of bombers or whatever. That's going to happen. But for the most part, you're going to sink a lot of ships in this game.
Yeah. Just one quick on the maneuver point is a great thing about this game too is learning how to utilize, and I'm not great at this, the move, fire, and move. You can move, you can fire, and you can get the hell out of there.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is great.
And you can do a couple different attacks depending on what ship you get. You just can't do two of the same kind. So
right. So you could attack a surface unit, and if a sub's nearby, wow. And we didn't utilize that near as much as we should have, and we could have. You can attack a surface unit, and then you can attack the subs.
Yep.
The one, you talk about maneuver, there's also this stack maneuvering, which is pretty interesting too. So let's say this doesn't apply to every type of attack. There's 5 different types of attack in the game, and they each have their own very step-by-step process. And I don't think we need to go into the detail of them, but most of them have this concept of anti-air and local anti-air. And your order of your stack of ships or boats is kind of sets the defensive value. So Rich targets this specific ship after I lock my stack ordering in place. That ship will then factor in all the anti-air in the stack, and then also its local anti-air and the ship immediately below it. So there's also this, or I keep saying local, it's close. There's this level of not only maneuvering your ships across the map and everything, but also maneuvering your stacks, manipulating your stacks to try to
Yeah. And you can change your stacks. Like as soon as I say I'm attacking this stack, you get to reorganize it however you want before I select specific targets.
And it's very important that you point as designated by the rules. Point at the stack. There's so much pointing in the rules.
Yeah, but it does make a difference because, I mean, obviously you're often going to want to protect the most valuable ships. You got to protect the carrier.
Right.
But if you've got a bunch of air, maybe you take out his defenses first and you come after him the next turn. So, but carriers have additional defenses like combat air patrol and things like that as well.
Sure. What else are you thinking in terms of I think there's several things that make fleets. And I want to make sure we didn't miss any of those. So
one thing that I thought you sort of briefly mentioned on it, but I haven't played the other games, but in this game, you can actually use terrain to your advantage. So you can hug the fjords to give you actually sometimes defenses and sometimes negatives. Submarines can, if you play the advanced rules, they can actually go deep, but not everywhere because there are mountains underneath the water as well, and there's certain areas you can't go deep through. So, it's not something you usually think about in a naval game, but this game has terrain advantages.
Sure. Yeah, and it was different in 7th Fleet for sure, but on one half of 7th Fleet, you're in the middle of the ocean and there's no terrain, right? I mean, it's just wide open ocean. But then once you get around Japan, there's these bottlenecks and, ships coming in and out. And obviously, if you're trying to escort some merchant ships through the straits, whatever those straits are called, there's going to be a line of subs that you're not making it through without getting detected and having some torpedoes shot at you.
Yeah.
And there's some of that here on the bottom.
Yeah, you've got
map.
The SOSUS, which is the string of sonar buoys used to detect enemy submarines.
Right.
But on most of the scenarios, you never go that far south.
Yeah, right. I didn't play the advanced scenarios, which when we played 7th Fleet, and this is a little off track, but whatever scenario we played, and I don't remember what it was, we used everything, and a lot of the action was so far away from Japan. I actually really like that. A comment I had last night in the intermediate scenarios, and of course the basic scenarios, which the basic scenarios get you. The only new intermediate rule is attacking air bases. Right. That's it. What it does is it introduces all of the units at the same time. Whereas the basic rules, maybe you'll just have 2nd Fleet or surface fleets. Anyways, in 7th Fleet, it's wide open. And here in 2nd Fleet with these intermediate scenarios, you're in it and at each other's throats right away. I like this vast open closing down on each other with like the whole map. Who knows where you're going? I do like that. This Second Fleet does feel a little more claustrophobic, but it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, so there's 5 basic scenarios and 4 intermediate scenarios. There's 1 advanced scenario, but the advanced scenario that's the one I was talking about. It's free setup. It's the entire war. That's the advanced scenario. So, but the thing is with the intermediate scenarios, I'm looking at them, and most of them are only like 6 turns or so.
Yeah, I think there's 2 6s and 2 9s, I think.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to play this game in an evening.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, it goes to what I was saying before. For whatever reason, before I really knew anything about this game, I thought it was a lot more complicated than it is.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a very playable game.
If we really wanted to clip along, we could have knocked it out in a night.
Yeah.
But we played for an hour and a half last night and got halfway through. On intermediate scenario 2.
Yep.
Generally speaking, how you win and lose this game is going to be taking out targets. Obviously, so you get points for sinking certain things.
Specific targets, yeah.
Sinking a carrier.
It's interesting, though. That's actually one of the little sort of things that I like about this is the way the scenarios are written. So they're written like it's a historical or military brief or something like that. And like the first time I played, actually even on the very first scenario, I actually went into my rulebook and I was like highlighting, okay, wait, so the US's orders are to do this. And then at the end of the scenario, then it comes down and says you get victory points for doing this, this, and this. But it's cool because it reads like this is the situation. This is what each side is trying to accomplish, but it doesn't come right out and say, your goal is to sink more ships than the other guy. It reads like a situation report, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So like in one scenario, we had to take out bases for more points and carriers here. And you're right. There's all this background information. And then it's like, okay, the Russians win by accumulating this many points.
Yeah. There's one, the Russians win if they get all their boomers to the ice pack.
Yeah, that's the one we're playing now. That one's fun.
Okay.
I'm just getting slaughtered. But my 2 groups of surface units are closing in, so we'll see. It's outstanding. I want to talk about some negatives.
Sure.
It shows its age in one really particular way. So, first off, gorgeous map, and the counters are like straight out of the 80s, but they still look great because they have the silhouettes of all the units.
They smell like they're 40 years old, but that's fine.
Yeah, right, for sure. The one thing that kind of I don't like about this game is the strategic air commitment. So I'm going to pick up a unit in Norway, and I'm going to place him in the Barents Sea Zone.
Mm-hmm. So do you not like the little display of the way it's marked?
Yeah, I don't like. Let's say I send something from the Barents Sea Zone to intercept in the Barents Sea Zone, and then I pick up a recon plane from the Norwegian Sea Zone to run recon in the Barents Sea Zone. There's no. Once they're both committed, let's say I have a recon in both. I have recon in Barents Sea, recon in Norwegian. They go to the same box.
Right.
And they're there for 3 turns. And so it's really easy to forget, like, oh shit.
So aren't you supposed to rotate them to show where they're supposed to go back to?
Come from?
But you can't do that in Vassal.
Well, but you can give them labels and say where they come from. But when we played in person, there's got to be a better display option that someone should come up with.
Absolutely.
We used like the clear markers. Because then I want to know what airfield they came from, too. Like, technically it doesn't matter. They can go back to wherever they want. Unless they're on a carrier. They have to go back to the carrier. It's just the worst thing about the game. And it's not that big a deal. It doesn't break the game, but it's always like, where did this plane come from? Because you start that, and then 2 hours later you come back to them, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, so when I was playing on... Well, actually I did this on Vassal as well as when I was playing on the table, but I ended up I stopped using the strategic air displays because it was just me. And I was like, you know what? This guy's doing recon in this zone. I'm putting him in this zone. And then I said, these guys are doing interceptions. So I put them off to the side next to each other and stuff like that. I ended up not using that display because I didn't find it that helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it does work. Like, you're right. There's boxes to say which zones they come from. Great. It's not the cleanest. And that's probably a minor gripe. As well as the rules are written, I think there's so many. Oh, there's really not that even many. There are minor case rules, and I stumbled with this a lot, is what's the significance of AEW and what's the significance of EW?
Yeah.
And I know now. Do you know?
Well, EW is electronic warfare, and AEW you add to a cap to make them more effective, right?
Yeah. So AEW, good for your cap.
Yeah.
Like you can intercept with your cap sooner without taking penalties, unless you're using the little helicopters.
And
EW,
I think that's also one of the advantages the Americans have over the Russians, because I don't think the Russians will have those on the carriers, at least from what little I've seen, but the Americans do.
Sure. AEW, nope, I'm wrong. EW is good for SSM. So if you go bomb a base, it provides a negative die roll to modifier to the defense roll. And this is present in every war game, and this is 36 years old, so I'm really grasping for gripes, right? But there are things like that where it's like, what's the deal with that? And you just got to go look it up. That happens every war game, though.
Yeah, and there were also times, and this is just learning the game, but you pick up a plane counter and you're like, oh, this is an attack plane. And then you're like, I'm going to use him for this later in the turn. You get halfway through the turn, you're like, wait, he has a bombing value of 0. Why is he an attack plane? And what am I going to do with him now? So, yeah, there's stuff like that in there as well.
Yeah, when I bought my copy of Second Fleet, they included copies of page 5 of the rules, which is the units and the abbreviations.
Oh, yeah.
Not the unit names, but like in AA's amphibious assault, those types of abbreviations.
Right.
I am still referencing that sheet every time I play. The counters, everything's on the counter, which is great. But that means everything's on the counter.
Right. Yep. It's very busy counters.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different numbers.
Yeah.
And they're small.
Yep.
And do you have any gripes?
Other gripes, I don't know that it's a gripe. I will say that because of the dice rolling and the activations and how deadly it is, it can get very swingy sometimes. So once the forces start getting in contact with each other, you can find like 2 or 3 of your submarines gone before you had a chance to do anything at all. And that can be frustrating because attacking is basically one way. It's not like the submarines are going to... Now, when you do air fights, either side can lose steps. But I think all like the surface and sub stuff, it's just the attacker that's going to get to do all the hitting. So that can get frustrating.
The one exception is bombing.
Yeah.
You could take some hits on bombing, but yeah, you're right. Like on SSM and torpedoes. Yep.
So that can get frustrating, but that's part of the game. That's dice rolling and random events. But it is frustrating when you can lose a bunch of units and there's nothing you could have done about it.
It makes me want to go, and I honestly can't remember now if 7th Fleet was 2d6 or not, but it does make me want to. If there is a 2d6 one, if I'm not wrong about that, it does make me want to explore it, because when you're on a d10, there's no curve, so you have same odds for a 1 as you do a 7 as you do a 9.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of modifiers here.
Yeah.
You have some defensive modifiers for being in a task force or fjord, or some attack modifiers for attacking things but not having a surface unit present to guide in the attack. Very minor die roll modifiers. There's just not a lot to factor in, and so your die roll is pretty. I'm sure that's factored into the combat results. Like you can roll a 1 and still inflict some damage, right? But I do get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that's just a natural that's an outcome of having the flat curve and no modifiers.
And I think that's also that's what this game is. Like I said,
Right.
I think it's the third time I've said it now. The game is not as complicated as I thought it would be. So part of not being as complicated is it's a quick playing game and ships go to the bottom faster.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, in 6 turns, if you're going to play an intermediate scenario and you're going to play 6 turns, you want ships to go down in 6 turns.
Yeah.
You don't want to set up the game and play for 3 hours and then walk out and be like, well, I hit your ship with 1 and I guess we're done.
I hit that boomer 4 times and he still made it to the ice pack. What the hell?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, good.
So I do want to play this game, the advanced rules, full campaign mode sometime. I might. It won't be this month because we're going to be setting up Pacific War, but maybe come January, I'll put this back on my table, and it's probably going to be solo. I don't think I'll have anyone to do that with me, but I just want to see how it plays out with everything.
You know, in our secret rendezvous coming up in February, when we did, and I've talked about this, when we did 7th Fleet, we had joint commands.
Yeah.
You could do that. Like, I don't know if I'd use 2nd Fleet for it, just because, like, the Russians are all pouring out of the same dock, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all coming from the Barents Sea Zone. I'll just throw it out there. Joint command, advance,
or even if you
7th Fleet or something.
And I know there's going to be 4 of us, not 3, but if you had 3 players, a lot of the times there's a U.S. fleet and then a multinational fleet. So you could do it that way, too.
Sure. Good. Let's talk, if you have nothing else, about recommended reading, which I don't have any.
Yeah, well, I had one that seemed obvious to me, and that was Red Storm Rising. So,
sure.
I mean, this game evoked that for me. In fact, it's not in the rule book, but it's on the Vassal module. It's published in a magazine. There's a scenario that is directly from Red Storm Rising. So
awesome.
Yeah, there's a chapter in Red Storm Rising called, I think, Flight of the Vampires or something like that, and that's the name of the scenario, where basically you send a bunch of those old Russian propeller bombers and shoot 1 million cruise missiles at a U.S. fleet and see how many you can sink. So, Red Storm Rising starts with a lot of fighting in this area. You know, the Russians, I'm going to spoil an old book for you, but start by taking Iceland, basically. And there's a lot of fighting around Iceland and in these seas. So that's the one I thought of immediately.
Nice. Well, we don't normally do this, but we had a listener question that lines up nicely here.
Yeah.
And that is, what is a good cocktail pairing for the North Atlantic Theater?
Vodka, maybe? I guess it depends on which side you're playing.
Right. My thought was, okay, you take the sink pack, right?
Okay.
Which you need to change to the sinkattle.
So sink pack it's bourbon and rum.
Right.
You want to go like bourbon and vodka?
No, I had two modifications here.
Okay.
One is when you boil your sugar cube, you just make it extra hot.
Okay.
Or maybe you don't serve it with ice because it's cold. My other option was you put a drop of pickled herring juice in with your sink pack to make it a sinkattle.
Yeah. I think you got to take the rum out, though, because rum is like a
you're probably right.
drink. So maybe, we'll have to think on that one.
Well, you could do Scotch, right? I mean, Scotland is represented.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about the Rob Roy. That's the big, obvious, boring choice. Sure, Rob Roy. Okay, yeah, Scotland's on the map. So maybe you leave in the rum and you take out the bourbon and put in Scotch.
Yeah, we'll have to think on that.
Okay, well, there you go, folks.
I'm not drinking pickled herring juice, though.
Okay, fine. Well, when I think Scandinavia...
Yeah, I know.
My heart beats a little faster. I get a little happier, but I also think pickled herring. Awesome. Any other closing comments, or is it time?
No, I think it's time.
Folks, we have a list. A list of every war game ever made, ranked from best to worst.
There is a list.
There is a list. Now, Rich and I are merely the sculptors, the shapers. We're merely the ones that stick our hands out and let the clay find its own shape. And we do this by taking Second Fleet and comparing it against all the other games and find a nice little spot for it here on our list.
You think a
So-
game already knows where it lives and it's just waiting for us to meet
Uh-huh.
it there? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
We're like carrot farmers. And we walk out into the field of Second Fleet carrots and we yank one up. And we say, looky there. This one's tagged number 600. Just kidding. Second Fleet's way higher than 600.
It's higher than 55, you know that.
That's for sure. So, yeah, we're 1 through 55 right now. This will be 56. I know where it's at for me very clearly due to a certain list we had to submit, meaning this cracked mine.
Okay, interesting.
So I have a floor, and I don't know if you'll agree with it. I can throw it out there.
Okay, go ahead and throw the floor out there.
I have it above Nevsky.
Ooh, okay. I mean, I think I was in that area, but I wasn't sure that would be the floor. You have it above Nevsky. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and then I kind of waffled on this thing where it's above Stalingrad, but below Dien Bien Phu, which is a logical fallacy with the list.
Yeah, and I need to play Stalingrad because... Yeah, see, I would say I would put it below Empire of the Sun.
But above Dien Bien Phu, and here I stand?
I don't know, but I wouldn't put it above Empire of the Sun, so...
Oh, you're just saying below Empire of the Sun.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You didn't mean directly
a higher
below.
number. Yeah, not a higher ranking. Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if I put it above Dien Bien Phu. Who?
So, I mean, so 12 is Dien Bien Phu, 13
Right.
is Korea, which we just reviewed, and 14 is Nevsky. And just to sort of round that out, 15 is Next War Vietnam. I would definitely have it above Next War Vietnam.
Yeah.
Korea, Nevsky.
Yeah, not the more I think about it, not above Dien Bien Phu.
Yeah. I don't think I would argue with it being higher than Nevsky.
Okay.
I'm not sure about Korea, but I'm not sold on... I am sure about Dien Bien Phu. So I think we're looking at either 13 or 14 here. And I think... So this is another one where it's just... It's got a very high fun factor and good decisions as well.
Yes.
It's got a few issues, but they're minor.
Oh, super minor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, and this has nothing to do with the game itself, if this one had a modern vassal module, it would make it 10 times better.
Oh, yeah. If someone really put some love into it with some automation. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So really it comes down to what's better, Korea, the Forgotten War, or Second Fleet?
Yeah,
It's a tough call.
that's really tough.
I think this is one of the toughest calls we've made.
Yeah, we're really splitting hairs here.
Yeah. You like it at 13?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with it. It's too close to argue over one spot, but I won't argue with it making it better than Korea. I would argue if you wanted to go higher than Dien Bien Phu.
So we're saying above Korea, the Forgotten War.
Yeah.
I'll go with that. I'm comfortable with that. I'll say that both are, once Paul and I finish our campaign game of Korea in about 30 years, and we do that advanced with all the rules of Second Fleet, we'll revisit it. But for now, as it stands, I'm good with this.
Yes, that's 13 and 14, 2 months in a row.
That's right.
Nice.
It's
Actually, it was
some good
13
gaming.
2 months in a row, now that I think of it.
Right. So that's 56 games. How many games to go?
Well, we can either do 56 more, or we can stop when we both have played every game that we own. And I didn't buy any new games this month, so that's all on you.
Yeah, I added 2 more plus the G&T sales. It just never ends. Yeah, folks. So our list is growing, and if you want to get involved in our list, normally you can do so by voting. Now, we pre-picked November and December, so we haven't been doing any voting. Next month, Pacific War, we've talked about it. But in January, we'll be back, and you can vote by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/historytable. We put up a whole bunch of games, and you get to vote, and whatever everyone votes on is what we review. Plus, we have some listener picks coming up. I have the hiccups. It's terrible. So, yeah, I think the one thing I was getting
pickled
to...
herring juice.
I think so. I was alluding to earlier is Fleet is being reprinted, but it's being reprinted by Compass. And although I've been reading some new compass rules, considering a few things. My concern is, so they're doing Fifth Fleet, and I believe it's Fifth Fleet, but they're doing the designer Indian Ocean.
Okay.
They're doing the designer edition thing again. And my problem with that is I was really turned off by the designer edition of Korea, which was also a Bukowski game.
Sure.
And so I'm very reluctant and nervous to see what kind of treatment this gets because, and I know some people are a fan of them, but I just don't know. It won't be a pre-order for me, but it's worth keeping your eye on, I guess, if you're a Fleet fan or if you're interested in it and don't want to track down the old ones, which are totally worth it, especially Second Fleet, which is not, you should be able to get that very affordably. So Fleet Designer Series from Compass Games. We'll see what it looks like.
Interesting.
Yeah, cool. Very interesting. All right, we have another list. This is a completely different list, though, folks. It's way different.
This is going to be fun.
All right, so over the last couple months on our Discord server, we ran a poll where everyone could submit their top 20 games of all time, and we used ranked choice voting. So if you rank something number 1, it got 20 points, and if you rank something number 20, it got 1 point. So simple enough. Ranked choice voting, we had 36 listeners submit their list, and real quick before we get into the results, that amounted to 381 unique games, which provided for a lot of crossover.
That's good.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get to it. So how this is going to work, Rich and I talked beforehand. Instead of the Wargame game, we're playing the Hot 20 game or something. So how hard do you want your clues, Rich?
Well, let's start off easier and get harder because I'll have more information as I get to the bottom as well.
Okay. So I will let you know that this list votes were not limited to war games. So train games,
right.
Euro games, card games, whatever. Everything was open for consideration except miniatures and RPGs. Number 20 was a two-way tie. So I'll give you the first one, which appeared on less lists. Okay. The clue here is... I should have thought of these. The clue here is... Oh, man, these are going to be so lame. The clue here is you should be hungry when you get ready to play this game. I don't know.
Funche Magnet.
No. You've played this. And you like it. There was a streak
Feast for Odin.
Yeah, Feast for Odin.
Okay.
Pretty lame clue.
Yeah,
they'll get
that's
better.
All right. It's not Hungry Hippos either.
Yeah. Number 20, A Feast for Odin.
Okay.
If you're unfamiliar with Feast for Odin, it's an Uwe Rosenberg worker placement game. You send out your Vikings to numerous tasks. There's so many options in this game. I'm glad to see this on the list. I think it's one of my I know it's one of my favorite Uwe Rosenberg games. I just love there's a million different things you can go do, and they all feel like you're accomplishing something whether you are or not.
Yeah. And there's lots of different strategies you can try, and even if you don't win, you're like, I did something different that game. I focused on breeding animals or whatever. It was fun.
Okay. The next number 20, which appeared on more lists than Feast for Odin, recently celebrated its 500th anniversary.
I'm guessing it'd be Here I Stand?
That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that's that low.
Same here. Here I Stand is ideally a 6-player game with 6 different factions that all play a little bit differently. Actually, some are way different than the others. So they're all asymmetric, and you're vying for your faction during the Reformation to score the most victory points through combat or religious conversion or
exploration.
Yep.
Lots of stuff. Building fancy castles.
You play cards, you negotiate, and you, as Rich has said, have one of the best days of gaming you can have because it's that good.
Absolutely.
Okay, number 18. Set in Mexico.
Pax Porfiriana.
Nice, yes. Pax
All right.
Porfiriana. I have not played this. You have?
Oh, yeah, lots of times. It's good. If you played Pax Pamir, it would at least look familiar to you. It's different setting, and there are some different mechanics. But yeah, it's essentially a game about, it's a tableau building game where you're trying to at the right moment in time, overthrow the president of Mexico and take his power for yourself. Good backstabbing / negotiation game.
All right. Number 17, You Better Feed Your Family.
Ooh, Agricola.
Yes.
Nice.
62 points showing up on 5 lists.
Yeah.
Agricola. It's
Which
more worker placement.
I would take Caverna over Agricola any day. But I get the appeal.
I'm having fun with our Caverna plays. Agricola, Uwe Rosenberg worker placement. Here the deal is the card play is one of the most important aspects. It shapes your strategy for the game. You draft a hand of cards from 2 decks, and those cards guide your actions as you take actions to gather clay and wood and build huts and get animals and plant fields. And then it's probably, I think certainly is the toughest in terms of having to feed your family. It's much harder.
It is not a forgiving game.
No. Okay. Number 16 is going to make John R. happy, and it's our only Ancients game.
What would be the highest ranking Ancients game? Successors.
Oh, no. Commands and Colors Ancients.
Oh, CNC Ancients. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Commands and Colors is the block, I don't even, card driven, but not in the sense of capital card driven. You play from a hand of cards, and you activate your troops based off wings and flanks, and you activate a certain number of them. It's very light. You chuck dice and have a lot of fun, and Commands and Colors Ancients is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, number 15. This is an entry in one of the finest Civil War series ever made.
Ooh, an entry. Let's go Roads to Gettysburg.
No. Stonewall Jackson's Way 2.
Oh, okay. Yep. Hopefully that means Roads to Gettysburg is even higher. But I'm not sure how you're dealing with series games, so...
So series games were not combined. It is worth noting. That's a good point. In things like Pax Pamir, which has Pax Pamir First Edition, Pax Pamir Second Edition, those were combined. In things like Next War Vietnam or Next War Taiwan, those were not combined. Make sense?
Yep, got it.
All right, number 14. This is the only game on this list based off a separate IP, and it's a popular IP. Very popular IP.
Dune.
No, good guess. War of the Ring.
Oh, okay. I've seen that one played. I've never actually gotten to play it.
It's on my short list.
Yeah.
I hope very much to be playing that one soon. All right,
Cool.
Number 13. This is one of your favorite games, but probably not your favorite.
That's my clue.
That's your clue. Like it's in your top 2 or 3.
Twilight Imperium.
No. Red Storm? Is it still up there?
Oh, yeah. I don't. Yeah, might
Okay.
not be not top 2. Oh, yeah. It's definitely up there. Yes, great game.
Nice.
In fact, I've been wanting to play that more because I think it's Joel Toppin's been posting pictures on Facebook and playing it. It's making me jealous. So
I'm jealous of lots of things that Joel Toppin is able to play as frequently as he does. Son of a gun. All right, number 12, just edging out Red Storm by 1 point. This is a Euro game where if you bump into your neighbor, you go to war.
Gosh. Oh.
I didn't play this till this year. It's fantastic. It's an oldie.
I don't know. I don't even have a guess for that one.
Tigris and Euphrates.
Oh, you know what? I did play that on
BGA.
BGA, I guess. Yeah, I did not really get it.
Yeah, so this is a...
There was lots of like making blocks out of temples and things, and you had to like put your lion guy and your dragon guy or whatever, but no.
So you put your blue leader down,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, and blue represents something. But as blue tiles are placed in that district, you get points. If that district collides with another district and there's a blue leader in one district, and there's another term other than district, but blue leader in district 1 and there's blue leader in district 2, those blue leaders are going to fight.
Yeah.
And Rich, my blue leader, might kill your blue leader, and you just accumulate points, but you only score the points that you scored, or the number of points in the color you have the least points in. It's very simple. It's kind of like a little wonky to wrap your head around, but man, I think once you do, I get why this is like one of the finest Euros ever made.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it. I just, I kind of bounced off it a little bit, but that's all right.
All right. This is... I want to mess with you. This is...
Okay. Pause. Tigris and Euphrates is not better than Red Storm.
Well,
okay.
it was a 1 point difference between Red Storm and Tigris and Euphrates.
All right. You may continue.
Okay. Number 11 is the second best tactical game ever made.
I guess I'm going to say Advanced Squad Leader.
Yeah, and I don't actually stand by that. I just wanted to mess with Rich. It's ASL. It's Tactical World War II. We've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, if you don't know what it is, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
It's your first time listening.
Number 10 is our first only coin in top 20.
It's got to be Fire in the Lake.
Yep.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, that's the best one, I think. I would agree with that.
I would probably agree as well. So far, of what I've played.
Yeah.
Just put that disclaimer on it. All right, number 9.
I think I've played all of them.
Number 9 probably sits near the top of my giant pile of shame. You've played it recently. That's not a very good hint. I don't know. Mitch helped bring about the new copy.
Oh, Vietnam 65-75. Yeah. All right, there we go.
All right. Yeah, it's
number 9,
operational Vietnam.
Yep.
Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, I'd call it that.
Cool.
Got politics and all sorts of good stuff in there, which I haven't gotten around to playing that yet. Maybe next year.
Someday I will play that game, which many people say is the finest war game ever made. They may be wrong, but they say it. Number 8 is another tie, so the first one up. This is probably one of the most popular quote-unquote war games.
Twilight Struggle.
That's right. Twilight Struggle.
Quote,
card-driven
unquote.
game. Well, I mean, yeah.
No, that's how I got it because of what you said.
Yeah, Twilight Struggle, card-driven game covering the Cold War, vying for political influence over a whole bunch of different regions. I don't dislike it. It's just not my favorite.
Yeah, I like it. I like it better online. It's less fidgety.
Yep, agreed. Second, number 8. This is, according to this list, the best tactical game ever made for World War II.
Is it Last 100 Yards?
No, Combat Commander Europe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That one's never really on my radar. I haven't played it, so, I mean, I know it's out there. I want to play it someday, but it's just not something I'm usually thinking of.
Number 6 is probably the most abstract of the war games on our list, but it's also one of the most beautiful.
I feel like I should know this, and it's just drawing a blank. Abstract and beautiful war game. I don't know. What is it? What do you got?
Sekigahara.
Ah, okay.
Abstract in its representation. I mean, the game itself isn't. Sekigahara, another not card-driven game, and again, not in the capital CDG sense, but you're using cards to activate your forces and make them effective in combat. It's a game that when I first played it, I did not like at all. I did not like those mechanics, and since revisiting that game, just continues to get better and better for me.
Yeah. That one actually is, I like that better on the table than online.
Oh, yeah. Well, it looks great.
It does.
Number 5 is the best game ever made.
Is it the U.S. Civil War?
It is. 109 points. Okay. Number 4. You've mentioned it in discussion already. It is a card game. And I don't think we've ever played.
Card game that I've mentioned it since we started this discussion.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not a war game.
I can't remember that far back.
Oh, man.
I don't think I've said Innovation.
Nope. Good guess.
Now, what is it?
Pax Premier.
Oh, okay. I almost said that, but I honestly didn't think it'd be that high, even though I like it a lot. But yeah. Well, I guess it makes sense because I think most people would say it's better than Porfiriana, and if that's on the list, then yeah.
Yeah, Pax Premier, tableau builder, manipulation, negotiating, jump on the leader, open information. It's good stuff. I highly recommend it, and it plays pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Which
if you're
is
not
nice.
playing with my family, it does.
Number 3. This was the most popular game. This had the most appearances on lists. It did not crack into the top 2 though.
Okay.
World War II game from GMT.
Well, that really narrows it down. Is it Pacific War?
Ooh, you were so close.
Oh,
You were so
Empire of the Sun?
Yeah. it
Okay.
is. I haven't played this, so CDG Pacific.
It's great. I want to play it again, but it's a great game, and I want to play it more, but not this month.
All right, number 2 was number 1 until the last day, or maybe the day before.
Who cast the last vote?
Mac, Captain Big Mac.
All right, well, and now we know what he did.
So this is a train game.
Ooh, 1830.
It is 1830.
I figured that would be on the list.
Yeah, wasn't
so it
on
just
my
got knocked
list.
out at number 1 at the last minute, huh?
Yeah, thanks to Mac's number 1 game. Is that right? No, it was... Who bumped it out? I gotta move your Skype icon. No, your buddy Bruce actually changed it. I'm sorry.
Ooh, interesting.
So it was very close towards the end. So not Bruce's number 1 game, but the final game is another game you've mentioned already in this discussion. It's your buddy Bruce's second favorite game of all time.
Is it Pacific War?
No. It's a series game.
Is it a war game?
It is.
Okay.
You were hoping it showed up on this list?
Yeah, so it's got to be Roads to Gettysburg.
Roads to Gettysburg to 133
Nice.
points.
Yeah, and I actually played that one with Bruce a couple years ago. Actually, that was one of the last games we played when we were still meeting weekly at each other's houses before, diseases and stuff.
Roads to Gettysburg had several top 3 appearances, so in number 2s and 3s it had no number 1s. Same with 1830.
Wow, so no number 1s for either of those 2, but those were 1 and 2.
Yeah, they were just consistently in the top 5 and 6.
What game had the most number 1s?
I'm glad you asked. The game that had the most number 1s, thanks to our good buddy Bill, Mac Captain Big Mac, and yours truly.
Well, if it's you, then U.S. Civil War, right?
U.S. Civil War had the most number 1 votes, but that was not enough to carry it. It only appeared on 7 lists. And
really?
yeah, outside of us 3, I think it was...
I'm sure I had it on my list. Didn't I? Top 20? I think, because didn't I put it at like 12 or something? I think I remember teasing you about it.
Yeah, so I've got a list, and we're going to post these results so everyone can go through them. Yeah, number 12. Yep.
Is there any game that was only on one person's list?
Oh, yeah, there were a few of those, but they're mainly kind of obscure things.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anything that's like, wow, that's on like that game's only on one person's list.
Yeah.
Like 1849 showed up. We the People, I guess that's a little surprising. Other than that, like some obscure Euros, Can't Stop made an appearance.
Cool. So I'm looking at our list. So None But Heroes. We've got a number 2, not on the list. Atlanta is ours. Number 4, not on the list. There was no OCS or BCS on that list, was there?
Okay, so let's talk about that because we can talk about what just barely missed. 1 second, though. I need to make one small correction here. I don't think it'll change the...
Oh, after a recount, the U.S. Civil War is now number 1.
Nope, hold on. 1 second. Yeah, right. No, there was... I think it slightly influences Twilight Struggle. I just noticed that someone had it misspelled. And I thought I caught all these. Because when you asked about what showed up once, and I saw Twilight Struggle, which obviously is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
So it will just take a second here. Data sort. And I'll lock this down, and then everyone will be able to see it and double check it, but that should have been the last error. So what that does is moves Twilight Struggle up in front of Sekigahara.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So not a substantial change. Let's talk about those that just missed the list. Number 21 was Twilight Imperium.
Okay.
Number 22 was Liberty or Death.
Okay.
23 was Star Wars Rebellion, which is impressive. Not a game that we ever talked about on the Discord or anything. Star Wars Rebellion, and then Pacific War for 24, and then 25 is your OCS entry.
Okay.
And that's DAC. And I combined DAC and DAC 2 here because I think some of that is like, obviously GCACW was super well represented with Stonewall Jackson's Way and Roads to Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
The OCS votes were split. The next war votes were split.
Sure.
And so that does kind of hurt it where everyone has their own favorite in the series. And it just happened to be that, well, I mean, Roads to Gettysburg is one of the finest ones. Semenitch's Zachbon stuff split across a couple.
Yeah.
Pretty well represented throughout. And for those who are curious, Victory Games The Civil War was in 55th spot, so suck it.
Well, that's 2 of your podcasts in a row that have confirmed what you already knew.
That's right. And then most popular, Empire of the Sun showed up the most. Sekigahara, second most. And then 1830 and Pax Pamir. And Roads to Gettysburg showed up the third most.
I like the Pax Pamir love. I'm sure that was helped because it seems like for a while the guild had constantly had like 6 games going on.
Sure.
So, yeah. We're all playing it. We're all playing multiple games when it first came out on Rally the Troops.
Yeah. I mean, I fizzled on it a little bit just because I had so much of my fill, but not my enjoy the game, but like, all right, I just need a break from Pamir. But I could spin up another game for sure.
Yeah, sounds like we need to do that.
Here's just a couple that I'm a little surprised by, and then we can move on. This one of these is more surprising than the other. Men of Iron Tri-Pack did pretty good at 29, so top 30. But Battles of the American Revolution Tri-Pack also had a pretty good representation. It wasn't on a ton of lists, but it was high up on the lists that voted for it.
Okay.
Yeah. There
Anything
you go.
Anything else that was totally bizarre?
Bizarre?
Yeah.
Dr. Don tried to vote twice. Age of Steam got a lot of love. Someone had Gunslinger. Moriarty had Gunslinger as their top choice. I thought that was interesting.
Their number one. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I love Gunslinger. That's great. Shout out to Nate's list, which was full of multiplayer games. Not completely full, but Diplomacy, Twilight Imperium. He had a lot of those. It was pretty cool. A lot of Combat Commander love, both Europe and Pacific.
Did that one get, like you're talking about OCS kind of splitting the vote, did Combat Commander do the same thing?
Most people
that could have been higher.
Most people went Europe. There was one person, I don't remember who it was, that just said Combat Commander, and in those instances, I just assumed.
Okay.
And went with Europe. There were people who even voted for both. The Commandant's number 1 choice is Europe, number 2 choice is Pacific. So,
big fan.
Vietnam did good. I'm not surprised by the 18XX presence. I'm a little surprised because that it's 1830. Not in the sense that 1830 is bad, but that's just not like the one we talk about that much, which is totally fine. I mean, obviously people are going to have their own opinions.
That's the classic, though. I think that's the definitive. How many votes did Zeppelin Raider get?
None. Nada. No appearances. You know, one that's a little surprising is, and I guess I get this because I don't think they're top 20 games, is the Columbia Block War games. Had representation, got votes, didn't make it on the list.
Yeah.
Coin had votes all over the place, a lot of like Cuba Libre and stuff, but obviously Fire in the Lake stood out above the rest.
You said Liberty Death did well too, right? They were just outside.
Yeah, Liberty or Death.
Okay.
Just, I guess, is what it is. So yeah,
the people have spoken.
Yeah, I'll put the everyone's vote. So I've got everyone in the order that they voted with their top 20, and then the list populates from those.
Nice.
And you can see those.
You gonna do it again next year?
Yeah, absolutely. This is gonna be a running thing, and
cool.
Obviously, the more people that do it, the better and more diverse stuff, and then we'll compare it each year. And I just want to give a shout out to Dads on the Map once again. They do this every year. I think they did it last year and this year, and maybe one year before that. Regardless, their episode was a big inspiration for this. I know it's popular things that podcasts and Discords do, but they were the ones like, shit, I want to do that, because they didn't have enough war games, and so that's why we're here. There
cool.
you go. Oh, innovation. That was another one that I thought would do. You mentioned it, but I thought it would do a little bit better.
I think I had it on my list.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. I was peeking at your list real quick and I saw that. I was like, oh yeah. So, okay. This is a little bit of a long episode. I guess it's run standard procedure first. There's a couple of things I just
we charge
wanted...
the same though, so it's fine.
That's right. Before we go, I wanted to... GMT monthly update already happened weeks ago. But I do want to say congrats to Mitch, because the teaser was an upcoming P500 for a new Next War title.
That's right.
I think we all know what it is.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be playtesting that, so I'll have to, I don't know if I'll be allowed to talk about it or not, but Don and I are going to start playing that, I think, next week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of Don, I'll just roll, if you listen to this before tomorrow night, which is probably unlikely because I got to edit it, Don and I will be streaming our Bayonets and Tomahawk games going forward. So that'll be cool. And where I was going with that is GMT monthly update, old news, shine a light on, keep up this other companies. Just because everyone's seen the monthly update by now, we're not breaking any news. I just wanted to plug Legion Wargames, their La Primogenita, probably butchered that. That's coming out. That's Kim Kanger's remake of Road to Sharon, which is East Africa, early World War II Kim Kanger game. That, according to Legion, should be out by December. So you can still, I think, get your pre-order in to lock it. Like, you can lock in your price. When it's ready to finalize, then you pay at that time. Like, you go in and check out all over again. Worth checking out. Legion has really nice stuff, and they have a couple solitaire games that will be coming out as well. There's the solitaire Vietnam Air game coming out as well. The other one I wanted to mention too, and here's one we don't talk about a lot, but that's Compass Games. And so I got a copy of their November newsletter from their developer, James Buckley. And I was going through there, and there was like pre-order announcements and stuff, and some of this stuff I chewed over, like Purple Haze, but just looking at what they have coming up, I was curious, do any of these do anything for you? So Purple Haze is the Vietnam War game. Did you give that any look?
I heard that it was there. Didn't look too closely.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to that one. They have some tunnel rat scenarios in there. Yeah, I'm not just saying that too. I wouldn't say it if I wasn't going to. I passed on it, but seeing that it's got that optional, yeah, I'm going to give it another look. And then, so they have a couple unique things coming out. One is Pursuit of Victory, and that's a grand strategy Napoleonics game.
Mm-hmm.
Looks pretty interesting. I think it's very light. I'm going to keep my eye on it. But the one that really is interesting, if you like co-op games, and generally I don't, is called El Rey Planeta, which is King Philip of Spain and his favorite. And you play a co-op game, semi-co-op game, to guide and steer Spain during King Philip's reign. And so King Philip is doing one thing, and then the favorite is doing something else.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I think it could be. And it's a topic I think that is...
So you play his advisors, kind of?
One player is the king.
Okay.
And the other player is the favorite, which I guess is like...
Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. I thought I misunderstood you, but I see what you mean.
And it's semi-co-op. So I think you both want to do things. But whereas when you're playing... So you play solo and you're just doing everything and guiding Spain. And I'm sure achieving some kind of victory condition. And then in semi-co-op... The king is handling his own shit and political stuff, and the favorite is handling like the wars and exploration. I don't know. Unique enough. There's not a lot of like information on the page, but that's cool. And then they have a bunch of games coming out. Purple Haze. There's a remake of a game called Mini World War II, and it's a grand strategy World War II game that is... like has a tech tree, but it's all very simple and it looks okay. I actually like the look of Mini World War II a little bit more because it's so basic and simple. And this now has like, if you have boats, like now you have an Air Force carrier sitting in Japan, and it's a little bit abstracted, but I don't know. I mean, that could be good. There's that Blitzkrieg game that's like World War II in 15 minutes that I've heard really good things about. And I think this is a little more advanced than that, and that caught my eye. I wish I remembered the name of it. I can only remember the last edition, which probably isn't helpful. But it's all in the Phalanx newsletter. Oh, they have Race to Berlin. They have the follow-up to Race to Moscow coming out as well.
Yeah, I played that one a couple years ago now, yeah, but we played that together at one of our game days.
Okay. Well, what is cool is like I'm checking out these games and like I go check who the designer is, and not many of them have a design backlog, which is cool. I mean, it obviously like then I'm going to do some more due diligence, but I like this. I don't know. I'm just on this kick of, and some of these may not be good. I don't know enough about these games. I mean, Purple Haze does really look interesting, but there's new designers, new takes on games. I'm certainly interested in them. And like, if I can play a grand strategic Napoleonic game in 2.5 hours and it's good, I mean, that's why I got Swords Around the Throne, right? I mean, I want to experience that.
Right.
And so if they can pull that off, I'm super interested. But all right, there you go. I just wanted to do something a little bit different. You have RPGs listed here.
Yeah. What have you been playing much lately? I know I've played a little bit of Alien online. Tom's Town, last time we played was, I think, before last time we recorded, but I've been running Call of Cthulhu Masks of Nyarlathotep.
Nice.
Lately, and we're having a blast at that. It's so much fun. It's really fun watching my family, the players, just like get into the whole mystery. They've got like the whole, like they put up like the crazy conspiracy theory board, and they've got the connections and everything.
Yes.
Like, if anyone walks in our house right now, somebody's getting arrested, but it's good stuff. Nice.
Oh, I always love Call of Cthulhu. Look forward to getting back to Tom's Town. I need to doodle that out. I'm running Rebirth, the Genesis that meets once a month, and that's that really lore-rich setting. It's a struggle at times just to how to present that stuff, but I really like the group of players there, and it's just this massive, like, global scale scenario that's very slowly unfolding.
Yeah.
But what
so
I really...
go ahead. The GM or DM or whatever, how well do you feel like you have to absorb the setting before you're ready to present it?
I don't know if I have a good answer, because what I've tried to like have these moments where we peel back from the table and I explain like, this is how the world works. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's come through in just like the scene setting. Sometimes it's like, hey, I strongly recommend you guys read this chapter. Not that it necessarily, you can play the game without doing that.
Chapter is it in a player's guide?
It's in some of the finest produced books I've ever seen. And they've since stopped producing this game. If you're at all interested, I highly recommend you go download the RPG source, the stuff for free. You can get the PDFs for free. The art is out of this world. But there will be in the source books, it's really one rule book divided into two. You have all these stories combined with descriptions of these cults and these clans, and this is how they progress. Well, like, all right, now let's take a step back and tell you this story. So it's not the easiest thing to digest, but if you do put the work in, it's fascinating. And so that's like the struggle is like, how do you get your players to also read as much as you're reading and point them to the right things that matter? And we're making it work, and I think everyone's enjoying it. It's just a little different than, plopping into Call of Cthulhu where you're just like, all right, it's 1920s and weird shit happens. Yeah. Buckle up.
Cool. Yeah, it's just always, there was one time I played a game with a friend DMing, and I think we used basic D&D rules, but the setting was, I don't remember what it was, but he was very familiar with it. But I just remember thinking at the time, like, as a player with no background knowledge of this, I wonder if it would be intimidating to have to absorb the setting as well as everything else.
Yeah, I think it matters, like, how much does it matter in the game? Like, because obviously, like, something like Curse of Strahd has an amazing setting, but I don't know how deep you need it. Like, you can go really deep beyond the surface level, but the surface level is, this is spooky fantasy land.
Yeah.
And, like, how much deeper, you don't have to go beyond that very far other than what you pick up in the story as it unfolds to still not enjoy the setting. Whereas I almost feel like Rebirth is almost too dependent, but I enjoy it, so I'm okay with it, because I think to really get the enjoyment out of it, you have to buy into, like, this is how this spore infection interacts with this part of the world. And this is how this clan views this clan. And these are their characteristic types. And this group pissed off this group 35 years ago. And here's why it might matter for our role-playing. And that's a little different, I think, than just like, oh, this place is cool, let's learn more. Anyways.
Cool.
So what I am really recently jazzed about is, have you played Savage Worlds?
Yes. I played Deadlands a few years ago, and that's Savage Worlds, isn't it? That rule set, anyway.
Might be. I don't know. Actually,
I think it is. I think Deadlands is the Weird West setting for Savage Worlds.
Nice. So it's tons of fun. I like the system so far. It seems to not really get in the way. But Art, who has appeared on Deserted Island Dads, is running a Deus Vult setting using Savage Worlds, and that's so dark medieval, and it's awesome. I
just laugh because I'm reading that book Crusaders, and I think there's a chapter called Deus Vult.
Oh, nice.
God wills it.
It's so good. We just had this scene where my character walked off into a house with this nun who was overseeing this temple that has a miracle, and this statue is bleeding blood consistently. And like, as my character's talking to this nun, she finds out that the nun attempted her own exorcism and botched it. At the exact same time, the other characters use this, like, we're basically this department of paranormal for the church, right? Like, we're investigating the weird stuff. We're Hellboy without Hellboy. And they unfold this device that's like, oh, something dark and sinister is going on here. And like, that happened at the same time. And it's just like, it's just a really cool setting. I like the dark fantasy, weird things going on in a medieval world. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool. I have the medieval setting book for Call of Cthulhu, and I haven't done anything with it yet, but I want to play with that sometime.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm just thinking about, that could be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice. In one sense, I can see that working. On the other hand, Art's also doing something using another D100 game, and it's nice to get away from the D100 stuff, because I was using it there. We're using it in Call of Cthulhu. It's just nice to mix things up. I'm sure they all work just fine.
Yeah. And Savage Worlds is like promotion of dice system, right? I don't know if it has a name, but Like when your skills get better, you go from like a D4 to a D6 to a D8.
Yep, and then you have exploding dice. So like generally you need
Yeah.
a dice to like hit a 4, but like your dice can explode. And so if you needed a 4 and now you roll a total of 8, you have a success plus another success. It's got a name.
Yeah. Yep. That's the system I remember.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's really good. Yeah. So yeah, I've been RPG and I just haven't been talking about it as much.
Yeah, I need to find more time to play more. We're still playing Warhammer Fantasy too. I mean, that campaign that's been going on like, gosh, I don't know, 2-3 years at least. We've been going on a while now.
That's
still
all. And then
alive. Every character's still alive, amazingly.
Nice. And I've still got this great Curse of Strahd campaign going. I've scaled back significantly because I was in way too much. So I've got Curse of Strahd, M Space, which is this sci-fi kind of cyberpunk-esque space adventure, although we're on Earth right now. That's great. The Deus Vult thing, Call of Cthulhu, and Rebirth, and I think that's it.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. It's good stuff. All right. You got anything else, buddy?
No, I think that's it. I'm going to do a lot of playing Pacific War this month and a lot of singing this month. I don't know how much gaming I'm going to get done other than Pacific War, but that'll keep me busy.
I've started to get Pacific War ready, which for those listening at home means getting counters somewhat organized and starting to make a dent in the rules. So I'm getting ready. I'm ready to dive in.
I can't believe I clipped that whole game. But I did, and I'm glad that it's done.
I'm going to take the clip as I go approach, I've decided.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay, well, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for listening. And again, as we said in our recent Deserted Island Dads, happy holidays to you and your family and your loved ones. Thank you for making this a great year for History on the Table. We still have at least one more episode for the end of the year to talk about Pacific War. And likely that will be split into 2 episodes for our end of the year recap, where we talk about the best things that were new to us this year, as well as some other categories. We're still working out whether that's going to be live or not. We'll do a test run and see how that goes. But you'll hear our beautiful voices at least one more time, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you go hear Rich sing.
That's right. Yeah. If you're in St. Louis, or actually if you're even going to be in Columbia, come hear me sing.
It's pretty awesome. All right. If you want to come hang out with us or get ready to vote in next year's top 20, join our Discord. There's a link in the show notes. You come hang out. You can talk Michigan football, World Cup soccer, hockey. Shout out to the Hockey Hobnobs Survivor League champion, Brandon.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Brandon and Paul. Everyone lost in week 2 except Brandon and Paul, and we finally have crowned a champion. So congrats to Brandon. If you want to do things like that, join our Discord. It's a pretty good place to hang out.
Very good place to hang out.
We have a website where you can find every Wargame Ever list.
And articles. I have a bio.
Rich has updated his bio. Rich has updated his picture. All of those things. And from time to time, we post top 5 lists and articles and other nonsense. So that's going to do it for us. Rich, if they want to find you online, where can they go?
Discord is the best place, but I'm also on Twitter. I'm Trappier Jr. on there. I hear all these horror stories about people leaving Twitter, and I'm still there. So you can find me there.
Great. You can also find me on Twitter at historytablepod. But as I said on Twitter, which obviously is still live and like I still have Twitter, whatever. I don't need to go into that. The best place to interact with us is the Discord.
Yeah.
And that will always be there for the time being. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. It was a long one. It was a good one, but I'm glad you stuck around this far.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.